Yes, yesterday we spoke with Council President Mark Laredo, and today we had a chance to talk to Al Cecchinelli, who's the opponent, who's also running on that ticket. Good morning, Al. How are you?
Doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me today.
Glad to have you. I think we've done we've done debates together a couple times now.
Yep. First one on Zoom, I think, though.
Is that right? And how many times have you run for mayor?
This is my third.
There you go. Okay. So we'll talk more about that and everything else, just to give people an idea. I'll be moderating this conversation as I did yesterday with the conversation with Laredo. I'll be asking questions, some of whom were suggested by chamber members, and some that are kind of questions that I came up with or our chamber team came up with. I've told the candidates two questions in advance. The one that we'll end with, which was, I think you know about this, Al. We're going to ask you who would be on your Mount Rushmore of Newton. So name four individuals that you would put on Mount Rushmore. We'll get to that at the end. But first, I wanted to give you a little time, Al, to just tell us about yourself and your journey. Not so much why you want to be mayor, because we'll talk about that over the course of the hour. But tell us how you kind of got to where you are today.
Well, as a kid growing up in Newton, Teddy Mann was a huge presence. He was important. He was special to Newton. When there was a Pop Warner football banquet, he was there. When the boys club did something, he was there. It always seemed like the mayor was somebody that cared about the city. I graduated from Newton schools. I used the Tech Voc program in Newton, and I became a chef. I followed up. I went to Johnson and Wales University. I taught there for 2 years. I went out into the industry. I taught at Newton North in the culinary program for 2 years. And eventually, I said, well, I think I might want to go to law school. I went to law school. I became an attorney. I'm now a practicing attorney. I find that people throughout my life have shown me that giving back is important. I do a lot of volunteer work. As an attorney, I get paid by less clients than I get paid from. I do a lot of pro bono work. I volunteer at the American Legion. I am also on their board of the Sons of the American Legion. I'm their chaplain. I run their music programs. I'm currently involved with their Vegas night, which is coming up. So if anybody would like to put an ad in our ad book, you can contact me. We're trying to put a new roof on the building, a very large capital expense. And I see the Newton that I love going away. I see that we're losing our neighborhood character. I see that they're trying to turn us into Brookline. And, if we wanted to live in Brookline, we could move to Brookline. So that's basically how I got here.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for that. So let me ask you this, because on the one hand, I'm really glad that you're running for mayor. It's good that we have a competition. I think that's really kind of an important part of our democracy. So thank you for that. But on the other hand, I don't know anyone who actually thinks of you as a serious candidate for this office. So are you a serious candidate?
I'm a serious candidate. I don't have the money that Laredo has to run, so it's tough to send out, 3 to 5 mailers.
Yeah.
But I am out there. I'm working every day. I did have a setback. I'm off my feet right now. I had a little problem, medical problem. But as soon as I'm back, I'll be out knocking doors. My website is almost up. Having, again, when you don't have the kind of war chest you have to rely on people that are willing to help you out to get your website out. I am the definition of a grassroots candidate.
Right.
I'm doing this by my bootstraps. And I mean, I think I have some wonderful ideas of things that we could do to help Newton save money and get rid of some of our OPEB debt. And I don't think that that's being looked at. Our
Okay, well,
school,
that's great. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you are good doing a website, because I was going to ask about that. And but even your Facebook page doesn't really talk about you running for mayor. Your website page shows your. I love that feature where you show what you had for lunch that day and where you got it from. But it's not. I don't get a sense of that. And all summer long, candidates for school committee and for counselors have knocked on my door or had volunteers knock on my door. No one's done that for your campaign, and I'm just kind of wondering how aggressive you would plan to be, or how you plan to approach this.
well, again, on August 1st, I went into the hospital and had a brain tumor removed. And I was out for 3 weeks. And then immediately after that, I had a serious infection and I had a toe removed, and now I've been out for a month. So tough for me to, get out and knock doors. I do plan on getting out there. I hope to knock on your door.
So that's good. You don't have, we know each other, so you're good.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that Mark Laredo would be a good mayor?
If you like the direction the city's going in now, yes. I don't think he's ever seen a high density development that he hasn't liked. And I think that the high density developments are hurting our city. They use far more in services than they pay in taxes. And they contribute to more congestion on the roads that we seem to be making smaller. We have 2,300 units right now being built, and we're condensing the roads. So where are these people going to drive? We have 2,300 units being built, and at Horace Mann, they're still using modular classrooms. Where are these students going to go? We need to have a plan before we can do this. Our infrastructure cannot handle the development that they want to bring in.
So we'll talk a little more about housing in a few minutes, but the reality is that most of these developments bring in more tax revenue than they use. That's just a fact. And they also, our school enrollment is going down. So while some of our schools may need some work and maybe need to think about where kids go to school enrollment is actually declining and not increasing. So the added developments have not put a burden on that. But tell us why you think you would be a better mayor.
Well, I would try to make a reasonable plan for development. I'm looking at maybe having a third property tax tier, a commercial residence tax, because when you put in an apartment building with 120 units, that is now a commercial operation. And we're charging these people residential taxes. We should be charging them a commercial tax rate because it is a business.
But for those people who live there, it's not a business, it's their home.
I know, but the people that own the building and are paying the property tax are running a business.
Well, a guy who owns a small, two-family house in any one of our neighborhoods is also a business, right? Or family.
Well, we would make it over 6 units.
I see. So you would put an additional tax on residential units, property tax on residential units and buildings over 6 units, right?
The Craft Street project that they're doing, 294 units. If there are 56 kids in that building, every penny of their property tax goes to educating the kids at the $23,000 a year it costs us.
I'm not sure about your math on that one, but those people who live in those big apartment buildings, and we have them all over the city, and some of them have been around for a long time, they're the ones who have the hardest, maybe most rent burdened. So you're now talking about raising their rents if you have a higher tax rate on them.
Well, I think that we don't have a housing crisis in Newton. We have a low income housing crisis in Newton. Okay, I looked on Zillow the other day and there were 538 apartments or housing units available. Okay, we have 2,300 lined up being built. We have almost zero low-income housing. With the 40B program, they talk about it being 80% of the AMI. Right now, the AMI is, I believe, $168,000. 40% of that is, oh, all right, you make $130,000, that's not low income.
Yeah, but that's a federal standard, not a city standard. You wouldn't be able to do much about
Actually,
that.
it's a state standard.
Yeah.
And
It's a federal.
we've actually met the threshold for what they call low income housing. So we've been allowing developers to beat us about the head and shoulders for years to put in whatever they wanted, wherever they wanted.
Mhm.
Now we should be able to decide and maybe go with a 30-30 plan for anything over, 25 units,
But
where
the project you
30%
just
of
mentioned,
30% of the units are 30% of AMI.
the project you mentioned in Craft Street actually has a lower AMI threshold than most developments, and now you're talking
Yes,
about
it does.
there, which would
Yeah,
raise the rents for those people that that we're both very concerned about.
yeah.
So you're okay with that? You would raise the rent on those people because they're in a large apartment building or a large building.
Well, what we do is anything that's deeded for low to moderate income gets a break.
Okay, well, that would be any of these 40B projects that you're talking about.
No, the individual units.
Well,
So if we have a 200 unit housing unit, right?
mhm,
25% of it, so that would be 50 units, would be taxed at residential. The rest of it, 150, would be taxed at the commercial residential.
okay, and then you're expecting the landlord to charge a different rent for those folks? I mean, basically, we're talking about, I'm not quite sure how that works. Let's move on.
Well, we're already having the landlord charge different rents for the units. The 40B units are low to moderate income and they charge less.
All right,
So
let
yes,
me
we're
ask you,
charging different.
I want to come back to housing, but I want to make sure we talk a little about city finances too. So,
Okay.
as you know, there was a standoff between the mayor this past year and the school committee over the school budget. There is definitely concerns about what happens in terms of how we can fund our schools going forward in the years to come. You know, how are you going to approach trying to get the city funding in check? And would you seek an override if you were mayor?
First off, I would not seek an override. We know every year how much money we need to run the city. We have an idea of what we have for a tax base. We need to work within those numbers. Like you said, do you want to burden all of these people by raising their rent? Well, do you want to burden them by raising their taxes? These people that are in Newton are having the same problems balancing their budget as the city is. And it's not fair to the rest of the city if we can't do our job. This is our job to make sure that the city runs.
So what are the city services that you would eliminate if you didn't have the revenue for it?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would work with Dr. Nolan about cutting some of the administration at the school system. The administration end of the school budget is very heavy. The money should be spent in the classrooms with the students. Second, I would eliminate one of the purchasing departments, because we have a city side and a school purchasing department. I would eliminate one of the HR departments. We have a city side and a school HR department. Right off the bat, those are the first things I do. I would look at privatizing the custodial services at the school. They did it with the cafeteria workers. It seemed to work well. those are just a couple of the things. Another thing I would like to do is I would like to bring into the city a city clinic where city employees would have the option of getting their primary health care through the city clinic. If they choose to do that, they would have a lower deductible. They would have a lower copay. And we could save a lot of money. It's been shown that to see a doctor for primary care in a private office costs 10 times what it costs to see somebody in a clinic. Now, we're not going to force the employees to go to the clinic, but since they're here in Newton every day for work, wouldn't it be nice if they could go to their doctor in Newton?
So a lot of these things you're talking about would call for renegotiating contracts with, whether it's custodians or any of the unions that have health plans. You have confidence you can do that?
I think so, yeah. And we're not forcing, we're offering a choice.
Yeah. Do you think that the contract that the city signed with the teachers union was sustainable?
I don't. I think that they overstepped. But I guess it's better than going what was it, 5 years without the police having a contract? We had to get our kids back to school. They had us over a barrel.
So when we go back to the general financial picture, it's reasonable to anticipate that we're going to lose funding that we're getting from the state, which comes from the federal government or federal programming, right? So we actually may have less money because of fewer federal resources coming to us one way or the other. And a lot of those programs help a lot of the people that you've expressed your concern for, low-income families. What would you do to compensate for loss of federal funding for low-income families, for nonprofits that do so much to help people, for food pantries, everybody who's depending on this money? How would you kind of compensate for that possible loss when you're not going to raise taxes?
Well, again, through cuts in administration, cuts in departments, the money we save with the new healthcare program, those are all areas that I think are going to save us money.
Okay. Let me ask you this: thinking about your job if you're mayor and leading the city, and let's say you're at the Washington D.C. Conference of Mayors, and you go there and you get in the elevator and there's Donald Trump, and you have 60 seconds to tell him something. What would you tell him?
I'd say, thank you. You're doing a great job.
And that's it?
Yeah.
You wouldn't talk about some of the things that are important to the city or residents of the city. You would just thank him for the job that he's
I
doing.
would thank him for the great job, because what's going to happen is what he's doing now is going to help us all.
And in what way?
Well, by getting rid of the illegal aliens, we're not going to have to shelter them. The state's going to have more money to kick back to the cities and towns.
So a lot of those, they're not necessarily illegal. There are people whose status may have changed or have a different protected status. A lot of those are the folks that are working in the kitchens, and washing the dishes at the restaurants that you and I love to go to. They're doing a lot of the other tasks, taking care of our children in the daycare centers, or taking care of our seniors. Losing those wouldn't be a concern to you, losing those workers from our workforce in Newton?
Not if they're not legal, no.
Well, a lot of the ones who've been expelled or who've been detained are legal, and
that's actually a misnomer.
Tell me why.
It's a small percentage of people that have been legal, that have been held.
And that's based on
Homeland Security statistics.
Okay. So a lot of our restaurants have told me that their employees are terrified, and that their employees either have a green card or have some status, but they're worried they may go to work today and be either detained or not have their loved one or their children ever see them again, or because they're removed or whatever. Does that concern you, that we're losing employees in our city who are cooking our meals and taking care of us in so many ways are terrified every day?
Well, what concerns me is that that the majority of the media is pushing this narrative that people are going to be separated from their children and picked up off of the street. That's just
That's
not
happened.
the case.
It's happened in Newton. It's happened in our adjacent communities.
With illegal aliens. President Trump back in November said, first we're going to go for the worst of the worst, and then we're going to come for the rest of them. And he also said that if you got picked up while we were out looking for the worst of the worst, you would also be picked up. We wouldn't just say, we'll come back for you later. Everybody that's here illegally had an opportunity to go to a hearing. If you said you needed asylum, if you needed some other special thing, and they just didn't go to their hearings. So we would, if everybody, he also gave them a chance to self-deport. Now, if you are here illegally and you have a fear of being deported and separated from your family, you sign up, you get the $1,000 when you get back to your country, you bring your family with you.
All right, I got to move on from, we could talk about immigration for a while. Let's move on to some more local issues and ones I know that are close to you. So would you allow the Italian flag lines to return to Adam Street?
Yes.
During that whole incident, and it's happened now twice, there have been folks who've suggested that Mayor Fuller has a vendetta, and that's a word that's been used, against Nonantum or against the Italian community. Do you believe that to be true?
I believe that they are upset that we did not let the VCOD go in so that our neighborhood could be strip mined.
Those village center zoning.
Yes. And then when Councilor Crosley said, if you don't like our plan, vote me out, and we voted her out,
Mhm.
they saw that we were serious. After that, the mayor went and appointed Deb Crosley to is it land use, I think, or is it planning?
Planning?
Planning? Okay. And after we said we don't want her involved, the mayor slapped us in the face by putting her on a board that had more control over how land was used in Newton than she had as a city councilor. And now she's unelected, and she's making these decisions.
So you think it's a vendetta?
I think it might be. I think that she might not. I think that she wants to show Nonantum that we don't have our own manifest destiny.
So how would you, as mayor, I mean, this is one example of times when things get very heated in the city, and how would you as mayor tamp down the temperature, or help people become, perhaps more thoughtful in the way they approach each other and how they feel about things?
Well, I would not have ground down the lines at 10:30 on a Thursday night.
Okay.
And paint them.
Right.
I would have double checked my reports to make sure that they were accurate. And I feel that it's very disingenuous that that she says that this is a safety matter in a federal guideline, when it's a federal guideline that we're not a sanctuary city. And our welcoming city statute makes us a sanctuary city. So
It actually doesn't, but okay.
well, it actually does.
Well, the sanctuary city is a legal definition, and there is a difference there. So,
Well,
but
the
something.
federal government believes that we are a sanctuary city, even though we call ourselves.
Yes, they do, and that's been disputed with many municipalities or communities across the country.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the parklet in Newton Center. You've seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you keep that or restore it to parking?
I would restore it to parking. We have a beautiful green there that was never used. Whenever I was in Newton Center, the green was empty. except if there was a protest or a harvest fair. I think that the 56 parking spaces that were removed are important for the commerce in the area. Now they said that they added 56 parking spaces somewhere else. Great. Now we will have 112 parking spaces if we keep those other 56.
Right.
I don't see that. I mean, it looks nice, but part of the park is asphalt. I don't get it.
Yeah. So, and as a guy who is big on promoting music and concerts and events, you don't see that as a space for those things to happen?
I see the green as a space for that to happen, and I've been to many shows on that green. But
Yeah.
other than when there's something scheduled, that people don't just go there and hang out. And it's a beautiful green space.
Okay. The Washington Street pilot project between West Newton and Newtonville, would you keep that, or?
I would not keep it. I find that it seems dangerous. If there's traffic and an emergency vehicle needs to get by, there's nowhere to pull over because of the cars parked on the side. If somebody with a disability is getting out of a car that's parked there, they have those curb stones between the bike lane and walk lane in the parking area. The large planters, they serve no purpose. Yeah, great. They look good, but we could have people moving. Plus, on top of it, whenever you bottleneck something, cars get queued up. They stop, they idle, and they add greenhouse gases. If we're gonna, why not just let people get through?
And what about the argument that is useful and helpful to pedestrians and also helpful to cyclists, including the kids who go to school in Newton North, and there are many of them who ride their bike?
Okay, we put in a bike lane, but that major overhaul was not necessary.
I see. Okay. Have you ever been inside the mayor's office?
Yes,
Okay. You've been inside when Mayor Fuller is mayor?
yes.
Okay. She has a bowl of these fig Newtons. I stole this one from her last time I was there. Free fig Newtons. Would you keep free fig Newtons if you were elected mayor?
I would, out of my pocket, have a bowl of fig Newtons. Sort of
Great.
like Petty Mayor used to have his drawer of candy.
Great. If you've we talked a little bit about, well, actually, let me go on and ask you about some competitiveness issues. Newton has a reputation for making permitting really hard when a business wants to open, whether it's a large business or even a small restaurant or store, and for not being very friendly to businesses. Not necessarily a great place to open a business because of all the complexities involved. How could you improve Newton's reputation? How could you improve that process?
Well, I think that it needs to be discussed with the departments that, yes, we need to, especially with restaurants, we need to have a safety aspect, but we need to get this flowing. I think that it might be that our departments aren't talking to each other. Maybe we need to have weekly staff meetings between the departments so that they know what one hand is doing, so that the other hand can be ready to accept, something that's going on. We need it, and it starts, from the top. We need to have a can-do attitude. It needs to be pushed along, and we need to find out where the glitches are before we can fix them.
So I think a lot of business owners would tell you that there's certainly all those kinds of problems there, but there's also problems with the city council and how long it takes to prove something. You wouldn't be on the city council, but what would you do to help that kind of move that process along?
Well, I would talk to the councilors and I would, try to find out where they are on items and why things are taking so long, and maybe have them have a weekly meeting with me.
I see. And what is your plan to bring commercial development to Newton?
I would love to bring commercial development to Newton. I think that sadly the Grove Street project Would have been a wonderful place to put a commercial development. We see
Are you talking about Riverside or are you talking about
I'm sorry, Riverside, yeah,
Yeah.
Grove Street, yeah.
right?
Um, we see the buildings going up in Watertown and Cambridge, and actually, I think Waltham's got one coming in. It'd be wonderful for our tax base. We are right on the Mass Pike and 128, which would be great for commuters to come into the city. I don't think that right now the city council has a, a desire to build anything but housing. And I think that we need to change that attitude. And I think that we need to court some companies that are looking. The problem is where do we put them?
So the city council only weighs in on projects that are before them. So it's
Yeah,
really before them that we need to think about how we lure commercial development and how do we do that? How do you,
well,
so for example, Newton used to have, TripAdvisor used to be in Newton, NBC 10 used to be in Newton. They both moved to Needham when Needham offered them a real estate property tax deal, a break on
yep,
property taxes. Would you do something like that?
I would think about it, yes.
Because a minute ago, or earlier, you were talking about how you wanted to make sure we were putting more commercial tax revenue into the picture.
Well, that was through the commercial residential.
I see.
But to bring a commercial property in and get them to build the infrastructure that they need. As a matter of fact, because the commercial properties don't send kids to school. So then they're paying towards our kids being educated. We would be able to give a large company a tax break. They come in, they build their building, and we have that tax money year after year after year. It would be a win.
Okay. I just wanted to correct something, a mistake I made, which is that Deb Crossley was actually on the ZBA, not planning.
Oh, okay, the ZBA, yeah.
Yeah. So how would you make our village centers more welcoming, bring more customers into our businesses and our village centers?
Well, I think part of the thing is we need parking. I know Newtonville, they put in bump outs and took a lot of the on-street parking out. West Newton, there's almost no parking out there. I think parking is the key to having a vital village center. I know in Nonantum, we have parking up and down both sides of the street. We have a couple of municipal lots, and you go down to Nonantum any day of the week, and it's busy. There's people there. It's active. When I go to Newtonville, doesn't seem as active. When I go to West Newton, yeah, there's a lot of traffic, but I don't see people in the stores like I do in Nonantum.
So what do you do?
You add parking.
And where does this parking come from? It's not,
Well,
it's easy to say add parking, but where is that parking gonna come from?
you take the bump outs out.
I
Okay,
see.
and that's one of the things.
Mhm.
You work with the neighborhood to find out where parking can be had. If it's on side streets, if it's on, like in Woburn, they have the coffee shop by the post office. There's a little bit of parking there. They have the tea station there that does have parking. You have to pay for it, but there is parking. So we need to figure out how to increase the parking so that people can get to these places.
Understood. Okay, let's talk about the arts. Lots of studies have shown that the arts are a great economic engine for any community. What could you do to help arts and culture groups in Newton flourish and help and at the same time help the economy?
Well, as a recipient of one of the grants that Newton gives out, I started a blues jam at the American Legion on the first Wednesday of the month,
Mhm.
and we ran it for a year, and we ended up getting private funding to continue it. So this way, the grant was available for somebody else to get, and I didn't have to reapply for it. I would love to see more of that happening, more private sponsorship of the arts. But if we can't, we do have some programs that we run. Our concert series at the Newton Center Playground are wonderful. I just recently saw that they were doing concerts at Cabot. We have a budget. I was on Parks, Rec, and Cultural Commission for 2 years. And during that time, we approved different things to go on. We had no budget control over it. So we would have to send it to the city council and they would fund it. But it seems as though the commission should have an idea of what type of money can and should be spent on things. So I think that we need to have better communication between our commissions that do things like that and our city council.
Right. Okay, so I don't know about the grant that you talked about that started your blues jam, but I'm guessing it came from the city through state dollars that were given to the city to fund the
Yep.
arts. And those
Yes.
state dollars probably came from federal dollars or similar programs, right? So it all trickles down to, all comes down to what the federal government is going to invest in. And we know, we've seen, for example, the Newton History Center, the Jackson Homestead, lost a grant, a federal grant that they'd already been awarded for. They had to lay off a person that they expected. They've been told we're going to fund you. So again, I want to go back to that question of if we lose money on the federal level and it trickles down to you having less money on the local level, how do you deal with that to support a thing like arts and culture?
Well, we have to cut back. If we don't have the money to do something, if you want to have lobster tomorrow night for dinner, but you open your wallet and you only have $3, do you buy a lobster?
Yeah, no, so I hear you on that, but I'm going to go back to that. How do we help arts and culture knowing that but the supply of funds is probably going to be less? It's not about commissioners talking to each other. It's just there's going to be less
Well,
money.
we do the best we can with the money that we have, and we support what we can. We have to make hard decisions. This job isn't easy. It's hard decisions.
So are there other besides funding that you can imagine helping our many nonprofits in Newton that do so much for our city?
Well, we need to get some philanthropists in to help.
And you're the guy to do that?
I hope so.
Okay. I don't know how much you followed this, but over the summer, the city council zoning planning committee was going to have a discussion about why there's so much vacancy in office space, and the chamber asked to either let the chamber speak or let property owners talk about this problem. They decided not to let the chamber speak or businesses speak. I'm wondering how you feel about that.
I'm sorry, could you restate that question?
So when I was wondering if you had thoughts about the decision not to let businesses at the table talk about why it's hard to rent office space these days. And I guess I more want to know what would the door be like in your office in terms of hearing from businesses and what their issues are.
Okay, so who made the decision not to
This
let
was
them
a
talk?
Lyle Baker decision for zoning and planning.
Okay. I think that whenever we're doing that, input from the residents and the businesses is important. We should never have a meeting that would allow public comment, not allow some people to speak. That's just, the businesses should have been able to speak on this.
Okay, since you're not familiar with that, I will move on. But
Yeah.
so tell me one thing that another community has that you wish Newton had. So one attribute, something that someone else has that you wish Newton had.
I would say the commercial lab that they just built over in Watertown Square.
Mhm.
I would love to have had that over at Riverside.
Right. And by the time that that was approved, it was too late for that market at the moment, but,
Yeah.
and and now tell me if, let's say someone came to you and said, there's one thing you can do in Newton to improve it, one new public service or amenity, and you don't have to worry about the cost. What would that one thing be? Just give me one.
I would open my city clinic.
Okay, there you go. Your city clinic for city employees to,
City employees, and then eventually we open it up to at-risk youth, seniors, and any resident of Newton that needs medical care, primary medical care.
so do you know of any other municipalities that do that? It's an interesting idea, seems very complicated, but
Yes, Dr. Michael Fine is doing that in Blackstone. And for what it costs for health insurance for the city of Blackstone, he gives the residents of Blackstone primary health care for the same amount,
sorry, Blackstone is where?
Rhode Island.
Oh, okay. All right, I want to go back and talk about housing for a couple minutes. You mentioned a little bit about the village center zoning that went through a little more than a year ago. When that whole debate was going on, there was great concern that anything that passed would lead to a sudden, rash of more housing being built and so much development. But really, that's not what's happened. There's been very few things. There's been let me just see here. I have it. So far, one new housing unit's been built, 8 new units are currently in the permitting process, and there's about 40 more that are kind of in the works. Did we worry too much about what village center zoning was going to do in terms of the impact on the city?
I don't think so, because when we took Nonantum out of the mix,
We took other villages
yep,
out.
no, but when we took Nonantum out, Nonantum was the low hanging fruit. Nonantum, though in Newton and though still expensive, is the least expensive real estate in Newton. So this would have been the place where it started. And this wasn't the place where the heart of this MBTA Act was designed to go. We have what is it, the Mueller property on Watertown Street that they kept trying to kick up to a 4-story building. Well, that probably would have been a 5-story building if the VCOD had gone through.
So let me ask you, I got this email from someone this morning, and he wrote, I care about affordable family housing. My wife and I rented in Newton for a decade. We recently found out she's pregnant, expecting in April, and we're looking for a home to buy to raise our family here. We're disheartened by high prices. I'm frustrated how developers buy up properties at a premium and put luxury housing pricing families out like mine. But at the same time, Newton makes it hard to build zoning, to get permitted, to get through zoning, environmental review, legal challenges, creates a cost barrier. Wouldn't it be better to make it easier for a guy like this to live here by not putting up so many roadblocks and not making it so hard in terms of zoning?
Well, if we don't want to live in Newton, yes, but Newton has the charm of the neighborhoods.
Right, but when you say you don't want to see villages rezoned to make it easier for builders to build, then you're keeping a guy like this from being able to live here.
No, I'm trying to keep the nature of our neighborhood. I'm all for reasonable development. If you go to Adams Street, there are 3 beautiful 6-unit buildings that were done that fit the neighborhood. They're lovely. But when you're talking these high density developments where the VCOD said you don't have to have any parking, things like that, we don't want the developers to come in and strip mine our neighborhood. They come in, they do the work, and they leave, and we're stuck with it. All right, we already have a problem with parking in Newton. We have we just don't have the infrastructure for that.
So the governor has said that Newton needs 220 222,000 new housing units by 2035 to make it possible for people who live in Massachusetts affordably and to find a place to live. What's Newton's responsibility to be part of that?
Well, I think that there's a misnomer that there's gonna be any low-income housing built. The VCOD did not require any low-income housing built.
Well, our inclusionary zoning rules do, and if
Your
you make it for
inclusionary
small
zoning
housing,
rules
it's going to
do,
be cheaper
but
than big housing.
but the inclusionary zoning rules say 90% of AMI. Maybe if we drop that down to 20% of AMI,
All right,
that
so
might be.
let me ask you, before we get into the nitty gritty, what is the city's responsibility for creating new housing? Does Newton have any kind of moral, ethical responsibility to create more homes for the people like the guy I just told you about, who want to live here but can't find a place or can't afford to live here?
No, because we get into this trap that by building more housing, the housing prices are gonna go down. And that's not what happens. When you gentrify an area, the rents go up. It's been shown in Seattle. I don't have the report in front of me, but when you build these type of units, nobody's building low-income units in these. They're
But
building.
it's actually been shown in Boston and other places that when you build enough supply, rents do go down and they go down considerably. It's been shown in New Jersey. It's been shown all over the place.
Okay. You also have to look at the supply that we're talking about changes the character of our neighborhoods.
Right. So how do you balance this is not an easy question, I get it. And how do you balance the character, preserving our character with the fact that people like Jim or this guy who just wrote me this email can't live here and want to live here and raise their family and raise their kids here, right? So which character is more important, or how do we prioritize, or how do we balance those two needs?
Well, I balance it that the people that live here now are citizens. They chose Newton because of it was Newton. Okay, we have 89,000 people living here that chose to live in Newton. I work for them. Sadly, I don't work for Jim. I work for the citizens in Newton, and keeping Newton the Garden City is what's important.
So not worrying about the person who wants to be here because they would love to be able to share and enjoy that Newton experience.
You say that, but the Newton experience changes when you turn it into Brookline. Do we want to be Newark, New Jersey to Boston being New York City? No, we don't want to do that. We want to have backyards. We want to know our neighbors. You know, and I'm not saying there should be no development. Like I said, I gave a beautiful example of some lovely development in Nonantum. And that should be the model of what we're looking to do.
Yeah. Okay, one last question. Earlier on, you said we didn't want to become Brookline. What's wrong with Brookline?
Brookline it's got a lot of the high density housing. You drive through Brookline and the houses that are crammed together. Is not the backyards that they have. They don't have the culture that our neighborhoods have.
Okay. Brookline has wonderful residential neighborhoods too. So, but all right, let me ask you one last question about, go back to the campaign. Why do you think you're the only one who raised their hand to run for mayor other than against Mark Laredo? Why do you think no one else did that?
Because it's hard.
Yeah. Do you think you can win?
I think I can.
Okay, and what is your strategy? How do you do that?
My strategy is I'm going to get out there as soon as I'm able, and I'm going to start knocking doors. And you know me, once you meet me, you love me.
I do. Well, that's true. We may not agree, Al, but there's about the love there. So, and I mean, because I think back to when you ran previously and I moderated debates and there was the run-up, we'd be having a preliminary right now. I think there were 8 of us, 8 candidates
Yep.
sitting at a table at the old senior center there, all wanting to be mayor when there was a vacancy created by City Warren stepping down. And here we are today. It's just the two of you. There's no preliminary. What does that say about, is it that this job is too hard? Running is too hard?
I think that they see that the job is going to be hard once you get there too. We're looking at a 1.4 billion OPEB liability. We're looking at some things down the road that are going to be hard decisions. And I don't think people really want to make those hard decisions. I don't know why nobody else pulled papers. I'm sort of glad because I made it onto the general ballot this time.
Yep. So,
Um,
and we may disagree about everything but where to eat lunch and good music, but I appreciate that you are willing to do this and run. I really do. Thank you for that. So,
well, thank you.
the question I told you we would get to, who would be on your Newton Mount Rushmore? Four individuals from Newton's history that you would kind of single out.
Well, the first two are sort of a pair, would be John Elliott and Chief Wobben. I think that their partnership really helped move Newton along to become what Newton is. You know, that I think that it's really a shame that that whole thing was taken off the city seal. The way that John Elliott and the Indians worked together.
Can you explain briefly what that was, just really for those who don't know?
Well, John Elliott was a Puritan settler, and he was also a preacher, and he was proselytizing the Indians, trying to turn them Christian, which back then was part of the Massachusetts Charter, that we were to help the natives find God. He went and he learned their language. He translated the Bibles into their language, and he worked with them. He was an outreach, and Chief Wobben, who was the chief, was receptive and worked with him to do that.
Okay, so John Elliott, Chief Rob, and who the other two?
The other two are, well, one's a really personal one, is Anthony Fat Pellegrini.
Mhm.
Growing up in the lake, he taught me that, you know, that the community was important, and that there was nothing more important than helping your fellow, neighbor. And then Teddy Mann. Teddy Mann was just a stalwart. He was a fixture in Newton. I believe he's the only mayor that has his own room in City Hall. Have you been to the Teddy Mann room?
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, Al. I really appreciate it. You're going to give you a chance if you have anything else you want to say to folks either watching this recording or in our audience today, or one last pitch, or correct anything I said, clarify anything.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you guys for coming on. I love Newton, and I hope you do too. I'm on one of the most exhilarating job interviews I've ever been on. I want to work for you. If you have any questions, my website should be up soon. It's Alpha Newton. You can reach out and call me, or find me on Facebook, Al Cecchinelli. I'd love to talk to you. Anybody that would like to get together, I'm available. Thank you, and have a good day. And don't forget to vote for me on November 4th.
Great. Thank you, Alan. Just before everybody goes, a quick note. Next Thursday, we'll be talking to the two Ward 5 candidates, Gary Miller and Julie Irish, on the 25th of October, actually the 25th of September, sorry, at 2 o'clock. We've got the three candidates who are running at large without a competitor, Ryan Golden, Brittany Hume-Charm, and Jacob Silver. And we've just scheduled the Ward 4 debate also in October 7th at 10 a.m. So we'll make sure you get those dates if you register for this one. And Al, again, thanks so much for your time. And, we'll do this again in 4 years, right?
See you then.
Okay,
Have a good one.
bye.
Bye.